Hi, I'm Dan Galpin, and I'm here with Nicholas Roard, who is the tech lead of Android Design Tools, and John Holford, who is the tech lead of Motion Layout. Now, Nicholas and John, right now, what is the most exciting thing about being a developer on Android?
I think I'll basically be on the same side as a lot of developers. Kotlin, this new programming language that really makes things a lot more exciting and easier. Personally, it's also all the work we did on constraint layout and more specifically motion layout.
Yeah, for me, it's all motion layout right now. Motion layout is really exciting. What we're seeing people doing with it, what can you do with it, and it sits on top of constraint layout. So everything you learn in constraint layout, you can use in motion layout.
So what is so great about Motion Layout compared to what we had before for doing animation?
Well, it's essentially a purely declarative, just you write in XML, but you can get beautiful animations, swiping interactions with different objects, things fading in, fading out, spinning, anything you want really. Your imagination is the limit in this one. And all of it just from an XML file that is pretty easy to understand. And that's really a thrill to watch what people are doing now.
No, and the thing that's fascinating to me is because we have this focus on being declarative in XML, that actually means we can build great tooling. And so we're working on this new motion editor in Android Studio that will make creating those animations even easier.
What problem does constraint layout try to solve?
Well, what we really try to help with constraint layout is to make creating user interfaces a lot faster and a lot easier. So it's really building a solution for the developers so that they can create their UI and go back at it, modify it, tweak it, play with it in a as easy way as possible while keeping things very flexible.
How does constraint layout work in determining where to position and size objects?
So it's actually an hybrid model. Often people think that it is just a linear solver that takes those mathematical equations and solve them. And we have this foundation. We do have this linear solver. The problem with linear solvers is that they sometimes can take a long time to actually resolve. So on the plus side, they are very flexible. They are very powerful. So we have this hybrid approach where we actually created like a semantic layer of constraints on how you can express your problem, so you do not have to write equations. We write the equations for you. And then from that layer of constraints that you specify, we can then simplify this graph of constraint into a smaller graph. And in some situations, actually in a lot of situations, we can simplify it enough that we don't even run the linear equation solver. So we manage that way to only use the linear equation solver for the situations that really benefit to have this solver. But anything that is not ambiguous, we bypass the solver. So that way we both keep the flexibility and the power of having that foundation, but we do not, we basically do not, pay the price in a lot of situations, and we keep things fast.
How did you prototype constraint layout, and was this different in the way other Android layouts were developed?
So the key difference is that typically for other layouts, you only focus on the library side, the actual layout. For constraint layout, because we really wanted to build a graphical experience, we did both the layout and the tool, the graphical editor that goes with it. And the thing that was a little surprising in some ways, at least to me, is that actually both kind of cross-fed each other. Like we were able to modify the library to make building the editor easier for us or faster, and vice versa. Because we had a graphical editor, we were able to put some functionalities in the library that you could actually use. So it was really a joint approach, and that's rare because typically you only look at one side or the other.
What was the most surprising thing you learned when developing the constraint layout system?
Well, the biggest surprise was how users reacted to it and how they used it, and specifically with the graphical editor, everyone seemed to use it in slightly different ways, and that was fascinating.
Yeah, a good example of that is that when one user would lay out all the buttons and widgets on the screen and then try to make constraints to all of them, whereas another user might lay out one button at a time, making constraints to that button, then lay the next button. So that has huge implications to what you provide the user interface with at what time in the system. So that was a pretty good example of what's surprising in our world.
Now, out of curiosity, what was the first? Was there a way you expected people to do it?
We expected people to do it one at a time, actually. That was kind of the natural. But then we saw people would lay out everything, and then suddenly making connections between all these crowds of buttons was a little complicated. We tried to eventually incorporate a system that could handle both patterns in it. And now it's pretty good at either direction in the system. And one of the things that it really caters to now is you have a layout, and you need to just add one more button. So you can just put the button in there and you can just make the constraints for it and keep going.
So Nicholas and John, thank you so much for taking the time and taking time away from constraint layout and motion layout to come and talk to us. And so students, when you're using constraint layout, these are the guys who did all the work for you. So enjoy.